The chain doesn't stop.
Right, okay.
Do you see?
Yeah.
So would I end up throwing the bottle? I wouldn't, because the permissions keep going on and on and on, isn't it?
I don't get it, because I mean you're going to find someone who will say yes.
But the nature of this is in this example is that no one is saying yes. Somebody is constantly passing it on to someone else. That's what infinitum means, isn't it?
Yeah.
That it goes on for infinity.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's a great example, because I know for sure, even if you ask around here, 10 people, ask a Christian, they might say yes.
They might say yes.
Might say yes, yeah.
That's very good. I think I understand what the issue is. You're conflating the two. One is a real-life practical example based on human beings with emotion and rationality. One is a mathematical, rational example. So in mathematically, there's no, that number one might change to number two. If it's one in infinity, that one is going to carry on at infinity. Do you see? A mathematical law is different to a humanistic law. Do you see now?
Right, okay.
So in mathematics, if I say we're going with one for infinity, it's going to be one in infinity. What the 50th one is not going to say, let's go to two. Do you see?
Okay.
So coming back to this again, if there's an infinite chain of dependent things, me having to throw the bottle will never happen. So similarly, as a human being, if there's an infinite chain, then we would not exist. There has to be an end to that chain eventually for a human being to exist. Otherwise, just like a person that wants to throw the bottle, he will never get to throw the bottle because the infinity chain is carrying on and the bottle never gets thrown. Have you understood me so far?
Yeah.
So this is a very popular, reasonable example. That's the example Aristotle, he called it the prime mover, the first cause. So even in philosophy, in theology, people say, look, we don't have an issue with there being a first cause. So are we on the same page with that? For us to even be here, there has to be an end to that chain, otherwise we would never exist.
Okay, I can go along with that.
Okay, brilliant. So there is an end to that chain. Now, Rick, we have to ask ourselves that we call it philosophically and theologically, we call it the necessary being. So that necessary being was the first, isn't it?
Yeah, but the thing is, now you've just produced something out of nowhere. You need to provide the evidence for a necessary being.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I can agree with you on requiring the first cause.
Yeah.
But this is where the I don't know from me comes in.
No problem.
I don't know what that first cause was.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
And if you're asserting that it was a necessary being, you need to prove that. I don't know how you're going to prove that.
Yeah, the thing, Rick, is I've already proven it.
Oh.
I'll tell you why.
Okay.
I'll tell you why. Because when you take something that's dependent and you follow it along, for example, a computer is dependent on the mouse. The mouse is dependent on the person. The person dependent, there has to be an end to that chain. Now, if you're talking about the end of dependent things, by definition, the end of that chain is a necessary being. There can be nothing else. Either it can be dependent or it can be necessary. Now, philosophically, a necessary being, by definition, is something that is composed of parts. It has a beginning, and it can be any other way. A necessary being, by definition, means something that doesn't have a beginning, it's not composed of parts, and it can't be any other way. Are we on the same page so far?
Yeah. Okay.
Let me know if there's any issue with these definitions.
Yeah, I'm following.
Okay, no problem. If you think it's too heavy, let me know. I'll switch on to something else.
Yeah, it's getting a bit heavy for me, I must admit.
Okay, brilliant. So maybe I can switch it to causation.
Right.
Have you heard of the argument by causation?
Yeah.
Okay. So what's your issue with the argument from causation?
I don't really have an issue with it. I believe the universe had a cause.
Okay, excellent.
Okay. That's as far as I can go.
Excellent. So that's, I think, where these both arguments coalesce. Whether you want to call it a first cause, a prime mover, a necessary being, that's what we're getting to. So we have someone at the beginning. Okay, so at the beginning presupposes there was nothing before it, correct?
I mean, yes. Yeah, I mean, yeah, in those terms, yes.
Yeah, in those terms.
Right, yeah.
So, and it itself can't die or can't cease to exist. Otherwise, that being itself would be dependent or would be an effect.
I don't see, if there was a being like that, I don't understand why it couldn't die.
Okay, interesting. So there's a reason why I said a chain of dependent things. Because when you go to a chain, that chain has to end. It has to have a beginning. And then when it goes, it's like, let's just take lineage. You are the son of your father, who's the son of his father, blah, 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 blah. Eventually, it has to get to that first being. And that first being was the beginning. So I guess that's not a great example because that's a human being. When it comes to something that's independent, if that independent being can cease to exist, it's not the beginning of the chain. That would mean that there was something before it because that itself can cease to exist.
No, I don't see that. I don't see how just because something starts everything
at the beginning.
I don't understand how it can't cease to exist.
Okay, that's a good point. Let me just remind you of the two definitions I gave you. Something that is dependent and something that is contingent. Something that's dependent and something that's necessary. So something that's contingent is it's made of parts, it can be any other way, and it can cease to exist. So that's the philosophical definition of something that's dependent. Something that's necessary is it can't be any other way, it's not composed of parts, and it cannot cease to exist. For it to be the necessary being. Otherwise, we just fall into it's a circular argument. You say, oh, it can cease to exist, then that makes it a dependent thing. Do you see?
Okay. I mean, that just gets me back to how did you get to the fact that there was this necessary being to start? Why necessary?
So I'll tell you why. Okay, so I missed a few steps. So initially, what I normally ask is, I state there's three types of existence. And correct me if I'm wrong or if you disagree with that. So the three types of existence, number one, an impossible existence. An impossible existence is like a squared circle. You know, it's not rational, it's not feasible. And the second type of existence is something that is dependent. And the third type of existence is something that's necessary. So these are the three types of existences.
Rick, I just have to say a word for this because I don't know about this.
No problem. That's why, Rick, think logically. Out of these three, are there any other forms of existences that you think I've missed out?
I can't. Unfortunately, because I've never heard this argument before. I can't get my head.
Rick, don't worry about. Look, I'm going to be real with you. Arguments. You know, we can give a dime and a dozen arguments. It's not about arguments. It's about, Rick, the thing is, if something resonates with you, just go with it. Like, we're not going to pin you down and say, oh, you've left as a Muslim now, Rick. You know what I'm saying? So you have your own kind of way of thinking, you have free will. What I'm saying is, just be honest to yourself and just any question that I have, just think rationally and leave with any opinion you want. There's no force upon you.
I understand.
So I think what I'm trying to say is the fundamental thing that we all accept is that we exist, that there is existence. And you probably heard Descartes saying, I think, therefore I am. And that's the bare bones of the matter. So that's step one. Step number two is then, okay, we exist, there is existence. What type of existences are there? Okay, so something that is impossible, like a squared circle, something that itself depends on something, or something that doesn't depend on anything. And then, rationally and logically, philosophers have sat and they've said that makes absolute sense, and you're welcome to disagree. And you're welcome to say, no, there's another type of existence that you've missed out.
Yeah, okay.
That's where we've reached so far.
Yeah, okay. I've never looked into this before, so when you're talking about impossible existence,
yeah,
I don't see that as a thing. I mean,
do you see? Yes, I would agree with you, Rick. When I had this, I said three types of existences. Now that third one, knock it out.
Yeah, okay.
Let's stick with the two. Okay. Something that's dependent.
I'm happy. I'm happy to stick with the one, just knowing that we exist.
But you're missing the point though.
Yeah, okay.
The three types of existences are: number one, impossible existence; number two, dependent, which is us; and something that is necessary. That's independent. Like, I'll give you an example. Something that we regard as necessary to us in our daily understanding would be mathematics.
No, we can exist without mathematics. We still exist.
No, but does mathematics rely on something else? Does it need you to say, okay, that's a triangle? If something is three-sided, that's a necessary fact, isn't it? It doesn't require something to, it doesn't rely on anything. It's not dependent on anything, that mathematical fact.
I can't get my head around this because obviously there was a time when someone would see a three-sided figure and they wouldn't call it a triangle, they'd have a different name for it.
Yeah, very good. They'd call it by a different name, but it's still three sides, it's still 180 degrees. Do you see? On a flat plane. So whether someone's there, whether someone's not there, a triangle would always be a triangle, isn't it? Yeah. So that's what feasibly we would regard as a necessary fact. Something that doesn't really rely on something else. So a necessary being is a existence that doesn't rely on anything else. And the thing, Rick, is logically and rationally, no matter what kind of argument we take, there has to be an end to that chain. And the end to that chain does have to have a beginning for us to have a beginning, for us to be here, no matter how we try it. And I'll tell you, people that say no, it's ad infinitum, they actually can't respond to this and can't answer why we would be here without going into unscientific realms. I'll tell you how some people get out of this, Rick. They compound the problem. And they compound the problem by going into the multiverse. That's what I'm saying. And the multiverse, I'm sure you can agree, number one, has no evidence. And number two, it compounds the problem. Like, who created those infinite multiverses and stuff like that?
Of course.
So when we look at the necessary being, Rick, you have to acknowledge that that being gave rise to other existences. And those other existences were dependent on that necessary being. Otherwise, they themselves would be dependent themselves. Now, that necessary being, by definition, wouldn't have a beginning, would be self-sufficient. Otherwise, like, how was it the beginning? You with me so far, yeah? I mean, I still disagree because the old argument of, well, if that being existed, how was that created? How would that just suddenly come out of nothing? So we're just going in a circle. That argument, it's a very old argument. Used by Dawkins back in the days, but even they don't use the argument now, because rationally, philosophically, at the end of the chain of dependent things, rationally and logically, there has to be a necessary being. You just can't. If a person says no, how did that being come into existence? Say, okay, let's put that on ice for now. Okay, what came before that? Or something else. What came before that? Something else. Okay, we're back to infinity again. So rationally, there has to be an end to that chain. Just like for me to ask permission from somebody, the only way I get to throw that bottle is when somebody says, yes, do it. If everybody keeps saying, no, ask that person, ask that person, ask that person, it's never going to get done. Do you see? So what I'm trying to say is, on the one hand, you've got a standalone argument. Oh, who created that being? Okay, that's a non-philosophical statement. If I answer it philosophically, a necessary being is a philosophical answer. And Rick, what you're now doing is, what some people tend to do is when they think about the universe, they say, like, let me ask you, what would it take you to believe in a God?
evidence, sufficient evidence. Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah. So you're saying evidence.
Yeah.
Give me an example of evidences that would satisfy you.
It needs to be a lot of evidence because...
an example of something that happens today and you go, Zishan.
Yeah.
It's Rick.
Yeah,
hey Rick, how's it going? I believe in God, mate.
It would literally need Allah to suddenly appear above me in whatever form he wants, start screaming things at me, telling me here I am, and everyone else around to also see that as well.
I see.
We can discuss it after and see all the YouTube videos and all the people who have recorded it. It needs to be a lot of evidence.
Okay, so the first thing that you've said is you would need visual evidence, yeah?
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Visual evidence of what is that thing that you're looking at? Describe it to me.
What is it?
So you're saying I'd have to look up and I'd have to see something.
Okay.
Describe what it looks like.
It wouldn't. I don't even need to describe it. It could be anything, but just something that convinces me. I mean.
Okay. So let's pin that down. Because what you're doing now at the moment is subjective.
Right.
Like, this is how it seems to me.
Yeah.
Let's make it something that can be applicable to everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're looking up.
Yeah.
You see something that's in the sky. And what language is it speaking?
It needs to be a language that everybody understands.
Everybody understands. Something that's accessible to everybody. Okay, so visual evidence.
Yeah.
Any other type of evidence?
I'd need evidence of the power. What it can do. Just suddenly create a thunderstorm out of nothing, or maybe just uproot a tree.
Okay, interesting.
On a windless day, just pick up a tree and throw it.
Okay.
It's just use of power, make you invisible.
Okay, interesting. So a demonstration of power. Any other evidences?
No, I mean that'd be enough.
Okay. I appreciate your honesty.
Okay.
I think I appreciate your honesty and I appreciate your candidness. So you said something that I can see, it's speaking in a way that everybody can understand, and displaying of power of sorts. What if I was to say, Rick, that criteria can be fulfilled by certain creatures that are undiscovered at the moment? Because bear in mind, you do know that we only know, and we're still continuously discovering species on the planet.
Of course,
And what if you were to see a creature that you've never seen before, and the creature says something and does something, you know, like these movies of Godzilla or aliens that come down. What if it's an alien that comes down and does those two things? Are you going to now start worshipping it?
I mean, it needs a demonstration of power, to make you invisible or make me invisible and uproot a tree. Uproot a tree without touching it.
But we've seen enough Independence Day and we've seen enough Star Trek to know that, there's a possibility, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a possibility of there being other beings that are more intelligent than us that can come, and being technologically advanced. You know that the old Captain Kirk saying, beam me up, Scotty. It's beaming people up, making people invisible, probing them and doing all that sort of stuff. So again, Rick, if you see that display of power, would you start worshipping it?
If it forced me to worship it?
No. Because your criteria is, if I understand it, if it's floating, if I see it, and it displays its power, that's God. So if it's God, then naturally you worship it, isn't it?
Well, not necessarily. If it didn't require me to worship it, it depends if it's good or evil, or if it's a God I didn't like, then I didn't have to worship it. Why would I need to?
Okay, so that's interesting. Let's pin down a definition of worship. Worship could imply knowing someone the most, loving someone the most, obeying someone the most, or praising someone the most. So when you see somebody that's displaying all that power and you're praising it the most, it's a degree of worship, isn't it? Like some people, they love a celebrity, and according to a definition, you can say, it's pretty much worship, isn't it?
But that's all worship. It's like it's general day-to-day stuff. But when you're talking about worshiping a God. So I mean, maybe
let's just use a loose definition of worship then. According to your loose definition of worship, would that being then say that, you know what, I could worship that thing?
I don't want to worship anything if I don't have to.
Do you think it's worthy of your worship?
Depends on what it's depends what it stands for, what it's done. I mean,
so it's done exactly what you've said.
Yeah.
It's come down.
Yeah.
It's displaying its power.
Yeah. Okay.
It's communicating to everybody.
Yeah.
It's big. It's powerful.
Yeah.
Do you think that deserves it? Because that was the definition of God, isn't it? And God is naturally, he's worthy of praise. Because as Muslims, as theists, we believe God has created everybody, he maintains everything, sustains everything. So if you're saying that that being fulfills your criteria, would you say that's enough criteria for me to say, okay, that's God for me?
I mean, I could say there's God, but it's another question whether I need to worship it or not.
No problem. Let's put worship on ice then.
Okay, sure.
Is that God to you? Bear in mind, that was your criteria.
I know.
Yeah.
See, unfortunately, you put me on the spot with the question. And
Rick, I'm not here to trip you over, mate.
I know. If I needed to think about that question more, I'd probably need more criteria.
Okay. You can do.
I just suddenly can't pull out those out of nothing.
You're more than welcome, Rick, because bear in mind, Rick, look, we're on the same team.
Yeah.
We're human beings, we're on the planet, we're searching, we're discussing, we're sharing ideas.
Of course,
So I'm not here to trip you over. I'm not here to say, aha, you believe in an alien. If that is what your belief comes to, what I want from you, Rick, is when you say that's your criteria and you say, you know what, I see what you've done there. Okay, if that's my criteria, you know what, it actually doesn't make sense to myself. That's all we're doing here. If I say something, I should feel comfortable in this conversation to say, Rick, you know what, I've had a bit of an understanding now. And you know what? I actually disagree with myself with that one. I would probably need more. And that's what I think makes you an honest person, because you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, what you're saying is, upon reflection, that criteria is not sufficient for you to call God.
Yeah, that's right.
Let me tell you a criteria, and again, you're more than welcome to say, I disagree. The criteria that Muslims give. And we're going to help you out here. That you're not going to worship an alien. That's going to come and start vaporizing trees. So what we say is, he has to be, or God, for something to be considered God, has to be one. And there's 4 criteria. After the 4, then jump in. Has to be one. Has to be independent. Does not beget, nor is he begotten. That means he does not give birth, nor was he given birth to, and there's no one like it. So that's our 4 criteria. The one, independent, doesn't give birth, wasn't given birth to, and there's none like him. This criteria saves Muslims from worshipping trees, from worshipping people, from worshipping systems, ideologies, isms and schisms, Rick. And that's why, as a Muslim, we today are the most relevant religion on the planet. And the statistic I will use to prove that is it's the fastest growing religion. Other religions are fast, including Christianity, are becoming irrelevant. Reason being, if you look, Christianity has been changed so much. One example, the Church of Nicaea, or the issue of Nicaea, it's becoming fast, like it's detached from its roots. So what do you think, Rick, about the 4 criteria I shared with you?
I still need the evidence that you can.
No. What I'm saying is, do you think that's good criteria? Is this better than yours?
I don't think it actually demonstrates.
It's not meant to demonstrate anything. Bear in mind, Rick, you have a criteria for God. Then you have God. God and criteria, they're 2 different things. What I'm saying is, criteria-wise, would you agree and think that's good, simple criteria for anyone on this planet to follow for God? If you disagree, suggest something else.
I need something that demonstrates the power, and also the creation.
Okay, demonstrates the power and creation. I would say that's implied in the 1st and the 4th one. So in the 1st criteria, when it says he is one. Number 2, sorry, the second one.
Is he one God?
Sorry, my mistake. The second one, independent. If something is independent, Rick, independent by definition means it doesn't require assistance or help from anybody. I.e., it is self-sufficient
Yeah.
in terms of power,
Yeah.
in terms of action, will, consciousness, you call it.
Yeah,
So
right.
anything else?
I don't know. This is a. I can see the.
Do you find this interesting though?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. But it still goes back to the evidence for me. I just don't see the evidence.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
We'll come to the evidence.
Yeah.
What I said initially, Rick, was so I've given two arguments.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So one is called the contingency argument,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it comes from dependency. The other one comes from causation.
Yeah.
And then we dealt with philosophical discussions. But what I sensed from you, Rick, was you weren't vibing with philosophy that much. That's why I then took it to yourself and I said, Rick, what would constitute as proof to yourself? And then what was interesting was you gave me empirical evidence. You said that if I see something
Yeah.
and if that thing displayed power,
Yeah.
and what I said to you, Rick, was, with respect, I don't think that's enough.
Yeah.
I think your criteria should be more stringent.
Yeah. Okay.
So at the moment, we'll definitely get to proof, but what I'm saying is the criteria that you offered wasn't enough, and I think you agreed with that.
Of course,
Yeah. So what I would then say is, there's different types of evidences.
Yeah.
You have empirical evidence, which is scientific evidence. Yeah. Which is, correct me if I'm wrong, is something that can be checked under a microscope, observed, repeated. Yeah. By definition.
Yeah.
Would you say that there's any other evidence that would be appealing to you, that you would be able to accept?
I think that the biggest thing, the bigger question to me, is if this God exists and He's omniscient, all powerful and all knowing, He would know what would convince me. You don't think so? Would He know what would convince me? So why doesn't He convince me?
Okay. Okay, that's a very good question. I don't want to go on a tangent.
Yeah. Okay.
So that is the question along the lines of, why is there a test? Why is God testing us as opposed to giving us the answer and making us all believers? We'll just remind me of that. I definitely want to get to that, but that presupposes a God to begin with, isn't it?
Well, I mean, it's my only answer because obviously I don't believe.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why.
Okay.
The reason I don't believe is because of lack of evidence, and knowing that God, if He's omniscient, omnipotent, He would know what would convince me.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that's why I don't believe.
All right.
That's one of the reasons why I don't believe.
Okay, interesting. I'm not going to ask your age because you're probably a very young, handsome individual. So what I would say, Rick, is there's an assumption being made here. The assumption is I am going to stay in this condition till death. However, I would argue to you that what evidence can you provide me that you're not going to end up believing in a year's time, a week's time, a month's time? You can't. So I would argue that criteria, there's still a question mark. That God knows what's going to convince you, and God can still convince you, but you just don't know when that time's going to come.
If it happens, it happens.
Exactly.
Okay,
So that can't be a criteria for not believing in God, because that can happen whenever.
Well, it can be a criteria for right now because He hasn't demonstrated Himself.
But the thing is, I'm sure you'll agree, evidence isn't something that is restricted to time. Evidence should be something that we can apply whenever. Like, it's not like I do one experiment, I say I believe in God, I go home, do another experiment, God doesn't exist now. It has to be something that is objective.
If I was to die right now, I'd die as a non-believer, because He hasn't presented Himself.
How do you know?
Instantaneous, because in my mind I don't believe.
You don't believe yet. I would argue that if you're going to die, logically speaking, you're in speaker's corner. The thing, Rick, is I'm going to take your stance. I'm going to take your stance and I'm going to say we don't know. We don't know. And the fact that we don't know, we can't say a definite answer when we say I don't know. So if there's a possibility of you accepting Islam, I don't think you can give me a definite answer and say, I'm not going to believe. You can say I don't believe yet, but I don't think that's strong enough.
Okay, no, I mean, I'm happy to say I don't believe yet.
Yeah, brilliant.
Because it means that right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
We're being honest.
I'm happy.
So, in terms of empirical evidence, so is there any other evidence? So let me say, look, there's empirical evidence. There's testimony. So I'm sure you'll agree when it comes to evolution. What you have learnt about evolution, most of it is based upon people that you've heard, books that you've read. And when I say people that you've heard, they could be teachers, they could be professors. You haven't gone to excavation sites and you haven't dug up the fossils and you haven't done carbon dating.
No, I haven't done that, but I've been to museums.
You've been to museums?
Yeah, I've seen fossils.
But you haven't done the experiment yourself?
No.
Yeah. How much experimentation of evolution and Big Bang would you say that you've done percentage-wise?
Percentage of what?
Percentage-wise, like in terms of, let's just say, I would honestly say, in terms of experimentation, I've done less than 1%. What I done at secondary school with the microscope, you know, with the blurry images.
I'm probably with you,
Experimentation. Less than 1%.
Yeah, I'd say so.
So
it's only from reading. And
so 99% of our evidence is based upon testimony. Documentaries, David Attenborough. BBC Bite Size and you know, Natural Geographic and these books that we get from W.H. Smith. So would you say testimony as well, So that's what testimony is, what somebody has said.
But it's backed up by a lot of evidence.
Oh yeah, for sure. So like Professor so-and-so from Oxford, blah, blah, blah. So number one, you said empirical evidence. Number two, testimony. Would you say rational evidence as well? Logic?
Sure.
Would you say philosophical evidence?
Yeah, that would count. I mean, if you put them all together, it's more evidence.
Brilliant. That's what I would say, Rick, is how we determine God. While some people, they say, I got to see God, mate. He's got to be there. I got to be able to hold him. I got to see him. We say that's not enough, because now, if you say I want to see this, I say let's go Abu Dhabi. Abu Dhabi have holograms. In fact, Rick, you know the Queen, she had her Jubilee, isn't it? One of the days that she was traveling, I don't know if you remember, the Queen wasn't actually sitting in the carriage, it was actually a hologram.
Oh, okay, no, I didn't know that. I mean, I could believe it.
A lot of people were waving. She wasn't even in there. It was a hologram.
I could believe it.
You see? So there's such detailed holograms, anybody could do anything and deceive you. So as Muslims, we believe that there'll be somebody called the Antichrist. And the Antichrist will use empirical evidence to convince people that I'm God, mate. But as Muslims, Rick, we say empirical evidence is not enough. And you'd say, what's the evidence? I go back to the chapter of the Quran. He has to be one, independent, does not give birth and is not given birth to, and there's none like it. So anytime someone brings something, as Muslims, we critique that thing using this criteria. So I would say, Rick, broaden your criteria and say it's not something that I see, it has to be something that makes sense to me as well.
Of course.
So out of this criteria, let's branch out now. What other criteria would you say that you would add on to the 4 Islamic criteria that I've given?
I don't know. Right now, I don't know.
And the thing is, the Quran has been around for 1400 years, Rick. And I'm sure you...
But it's not a long time in the history of time.
Well, it depends. Time is subjective. For me, my ride in the tube here was a very long time because I was sweating. So 1400 years, historically, it is a long time. And that's why we have manuscripts and, you know, people ask for evidences. How do we know Muhammad even existed? But the thing is, as Muslims, we can, you know, we've got evidence in our back pocket. We've got evidence in our back pocket.
I understand,
Let me reach into my back pocket. Let me see what pops out of my back pocket.
Is that a Quran?
It's not going to be a Quran. I would never keep it in my back pocket. I'd keep it in this pocket next to my heart. Oh, what do we have here? So this is a coin. You're welcome to look at this. This is a coin that is 140 years after the Prophet. And there's coins, you know, my friend, he has a coin that is dated to the time of the Prophet and the companions. So the point that I'm trying to say, Rick, here is, when it comes to heritage, when it comes to evidence, we have manuscripts of the Quran. And this is a claim out of the historical religions. Islam is the only one that makes this claim. Christians don't say that they have a Bible that can be dated to the time of Jesus. Hindus do not claim that they have the Vedas that can be dated to the time of Brahman or to the time of their prophets. Muslims are the only one, Rick, that say that we have 4 folios with 100% accuracy in words, carbon dated by University of Oxford. And guess where that manuscript actually is? Take a wild guess, which country?
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan, good guess. Not quite.
Somewhere in the Middle East.
Middle East, somewhere in the Middle East. Okay, very good. I appreciate your honesty. It's actually not the Middle East. The oldest manuscript of the Quran is actually here in this country. It's in Birmingham. The University of Birmingham, and it's been carbon dated by the University of Oxford. There's 4 folios with 100% accuracy of words dating to the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him. This is why, Rick, as Muslims, we're comfortable standing in the park, inviting people and challenging them, because we can back it up not only with empirical evidence, but with historical evidence as well. Just like in your hand, you are holding this. It's actually very valuable.
I'm sure it is.
So this is, so this is archaeological evidence.
But it's archaeological evidence that was a coin that existed around the time of Muhammad.
No, so this coin, the reason why I bought it here, this was 140 years after the Prophet. We do have coins dated to the time of the Prophet as well.
So I've got no problem with believing that Muhammad existed. And he wrote the Quran. Or I know he couldn't write, but he dictated it or whatever. But the biggest question for me is, how do we know, if he's saying he's the prophet of God, how do we know that's true?
Okay, that's a good question.
That's the biggest question.
So how do we know that somebody has come and he claims to be the prophet? What's the criteria? I'm going to bounce off you, Rick, and say, what criteria would you need if somebody came here and said, I'm the prophet, mate, believe in me? What would you say, this is the proof I need from you, mate?
I can't even begin to start. I need loads and loads of evidence.
You need loads of evidence. Okay, I'm going to suggest some evidence that I would require, and you're more than welcome to jump in. So I would say, if you're a prophet and you have a link with God, I need a miracle, mate. Give me a miracle.
Sure, it's a good start.
Number 2, prophecies. Give me some prophecies. Show me that you have information that the rest of mankind does not have.
So something that's going to happen just in the future.
And number 3 has to be a stand-up guy. It can't be somebody with, a blunt in one hand, some stolen chain, and a knee problem. And he's got crutches. You see, like, he has to be somebody that is befitting of a man of God. Doesn't lie, is not lying. Would you agree?
Then you have men of God with crutches then?
Men of God with crutches would struggle to get about. So, do you see? So if somebody's got crutches and it takes him like hours to get to his house, how's he going to do God's word if he's struggling to get to his house? You see,
we crossed that.
That's a moot point, So at the bare minimum, he has to be honest, Rick, isn't it? So what I'm going to say here is, Rick, let's look at miracles. In Christianity, they say Jesus did this, Jesus did that. And our issue with that is, Jesus did that, but we can't see that miracle. So you can't verify that, correct? Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the only one from the old religions who claims to have a miracle that's the living miracle, something that we can dip in and out of. And the living miracle is the Quran. And the criteria of God that I've given, the 4 criteria I've given, is from this book. And the point that I'm trying to say to you, Rick, is because it's 1400 years old, anybody can go home, anyone can go on the internet and start critiquing it, poking holes out of it, and saying this book is false, mate. And loads of these Muslims would leave the religion in their droves. Rather, the opposite is happening. The fastest growing religion on the planet is Islam. So the criteria is all there, but yet people are becoming more and more convinced. So the first thing that I was going to say was miracles, and the living miracle that we have is the Quran. And I'm going to just come back to this later on. The second thing we said was prophecies. What is your criteria for you to say this is a good prophecy?
It needs to be something that's accurate in time and detail. So it needs to be something that's going to happen on a certain date or a certain time, and it needs to be very accurate.
Okay, good. Let me give you some prophecies of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Yeah? You agree with me that he existed, and he existed 1400 years ago. So one of his predictions was that barefooted, unclothed herdsmen of the desert will compete with each other to build the tallest of buildings. And then the Prophet was asked, who are you referring to? And he clarified, the Bedouins of the desert. Now, have you had the honor of going to one of these Middle Eastern countries and going to the, but you've probably seen a documentary and you've seen these Bedouins, these guys just, poor guys just going along with their camels, surviving in the desert. In those days, the Arabs were so useless that the 2 surrounding empires didn't even bother to take over the Arabian Peninsula because they were just drowned in their own ignorance. Fast forward, Rick. After half a century, I would say approximately about 500 years ago, Arabia struck black gold. You know what I'm referring to, isn't it? Oil. After oil, there was and still is a race amongst Bedouins to build the tallest of towers. In fact, the first tower was the Meccan clock tower in Saudi Arabia, which was at 600 meters in Saudi. Then Abu Dhabi came along and built the Burj Khalifa, 800 meters. Then,
this happens in London as well.
This happens in London, but are they competing to building the tallest towers?
Yeah, a lot of the time they are. Around the world, people are trying to build the tallest tower in the world.
Incorrect.
No?
I'll tell you why. At the time of the Meccan clock tower, it was the tallest building on the planet. And then, 2-3 years later, the Burj Khalifa took over, and currently, it was the tallest tower. The reason why there's a bit of dubiousness because Saudi is now making the Meccan clock tower, which is going to beat that, and the UK pales in comparison. America pales in comparison. The only ones, Rick, that are competing with each other to build the tallest are the Bedouins. So my question to you now, Rick, is how on earth did somebody that you called unlettered 1400 years ago, witnessing the Bedouins, in the decadence that they were in, how did he predict that once upon a time they would be competing to build the tallest of buildings? And the second point, how did he anticipate the finding of the black gold oil?
I mean, at the time of Muhammad, weren't the Bedouins competing to build the tallest tower at that time?
They weren't.
I don't know the history of that.
No problem. You're more than welcome to ask. At that time, they were in the depths of decadence. In fact, with the Prophet, peace be upon him, that's only when the Arabs started having honor and respect, and they started increasing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the Bedouins at that time, in fact, there were two Arabs. One are the city dwellers, and the other ones are the Bedouins. The Bedouins, even at that time, just first floor, huts. Not even buildings, huts. So yeah, the Bedouins at that time, they were not competing at all. In fact, Rick, if you're a false messenger, what you would do is you would slowly encourage somebody to do something, isn't it?
Yeah.
Say, yeah, you should build tall buildings, mate.
Yeah.
Rather, if you look in the literature, in Islam, extravagance and building tall buildings is actually discouraged. It's actually discouraged. So how on earth did this prophecy come to pass when the Prophet was discouraging this? What is your rational explanation?
I mean, is it a self-fulfilling prophecy where he's written this down, or somebody's written it down, and so obviously the followers want to fulfill this prophecy, so they start building these things.
Yeah, but bear in mind, a self-fulfilling prophecy needs an impetus. However, here the Prophet is telling us. In fact, he's not saying that the believers will do this. He kept it to the Bedouins. Believers, non-believers. So if he said the believing Bedouins would do this, then you can say self-fulfilling prophecy. Rather, he said the Bedouins.
So they were non-believers, yeah?
So he just kept it, Bedouins.
Okay. But did he put a time on it? He didn't put a date on it?
He didn't put a date on it, no.
Okay,
No.
I mean, for me, a prophecy needs to be a specific date.
No problem.
Even approximate. You know.
That's fine.
A few hundred years ahead, I don't mind 50 years either way. You know.
Yeah. No problem. I've got that one as well. I'll get to that one.
Okay,
But what do you think, rationally? The thing is, Rick, we have to be honest with these things.
Of course.
You hearing this, firstly, have you heard a prophecy like this before in your experience? Something of this veracity.
Yeah, I've heard many claims of prophecies, which I haven't read myself. There's stuff in the Bible, but I don't know. No.
Yeah. So the difference I would say with regards to the Bible and this one is this is something that we have statistics for, that we can measure. It's happened, and it's the magnitude of it and the variables that the average layman would not have known. For example, why on earth would the Prophet say that the Bedouins would compete to make the buildings when the Arabs are low in number? The Persian Empire at its peak, the Roman Empire at its peak, but yet the Prophet is pointing at the Bedouins. It's such a big risk. In fact, oil itself, there's no evidence of oil being taken out of the ground, utilized, and even being used as currency. Do you see? So in terms of its uniqueness, that's why this was the first one I presented. It's impressive, no?
If that was his own prophecy and it came true like that, it'd be impressive. But say, for example, he made 100 prophecies and that was the only one that came true. That's not very good, is it?
Good point. Every single prophecy that the Prophet, peace be upon him, has made has come true. Either it's come true or it has not come true yet. And the reason why I say yet is because he has made prophecies about the day of judgment. Things closest to the time of the day of judgment that will happen, and we'll go through them as well.
What date is that?
Say that again?
What date is that?
So he hasn't specified a date with regards to the day of judgment. In fact, he said as well, the reason being, Rick, is because if somebody knows the day of judgment, it affects people in many different ways. Like if I told you, firstly, that you're going to die on such and such date. Firstly, I think you'd be concerned, like, how does he know? He's planning on killing me or something. But if it was like an objective means, you wouldn't live life, Rick. Do you see? So not knowing is actually a mercy. It's a blessing for us. Not knowing when the day of judgment is, it allows us to live, it allows us to get married, to live life and stuff like this. So that's a blessing. So coming back to this prophecy, what else would you say is required for you to say, you know what, this is what's missing?
It's just accuracy and the numbers thing as well. Like I said, if it was 100 prophecies and they all came true, that's quite convincing. But a lot of prophecies are open to interpretation.
Very good.
So you don't know you might have interpreted something. You say, oh, this is mentioned in the Quran, and it's something vague, some vague relationship.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah.
It actually reminds me of a prophecy in the book of Matthew in the Bible that predicted that the day of judgment, it's ironic that you're saying that, that the day of judgment would come, and the people had pinned a rough date on it.
Yeah.
It didn't happen.
Right.
To such a degree. Have you heard of someone called C.S. Lewis?
Yeah.
C.S. Lewis, C.S. Lewis actually said this prophecy is embarrassing.
Yeah.
You can go home, you can Google this, it's recorded, and you can go home and you can check this out.
Okay.
You can type in C.S. Lewis.
Is this a Bible prophecy?
Yeah, it's in the book of Matthew.
Yeah.
And it was actually embarrassing.
Yeah.
Now, this is something you can Google. You can type in embarrassing Bible prophecy.
Yeah.
However, if you do the same for the Quran, Rick, have you heard of anybody saying that this is an embarrassing prophecy that the Prophet Muhammad made?
Not really. I mean, I haven't read the Quran myself.
But think about it, Rick.
I haven't really looked that much into it. But
No problem.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes even when you're scrolling over social media, you come across, oh, Jordan Peterson said this, or Boris, the bumbling buffoon, has said this. So even when you're not studying something, people will scream and shout off the rooftops. This person made this prophecy, mate, and it came wrong. Mohammed this, Mohammed that. But the fact that we haven't heard it must show that there's nothing of substance, otherwise people will be singing and shouting about it. In fact, the fact that I'm in London now talking about this, somebody would have interrupted this saying, what about Muhammad's prophecy about this? You see?
I think you probably heard of the Skeptic's Annotated Bible.
I've heard of it,
It's a big resource, I think it's mainly sort of challenging the claims of the Bible, but it also challenges claims in the Quran as well. I don't know any of them, I'm pretty sure that I could look it up, and I could probably find something that questions some of the prophecies.
But coming back to this criteria, Rick, is that if either of them or any of them was solid, people would be screaming and shouting on social media, in Speaker's Corner, just like I said C.S. Lewis, you said I know C.S. Lewis. You'll be able to go home, you say, oh, I remember that Muslim saying this, let me check this on Google. You check it out. But when it comes to Muslims, nobody has said this. You can say, yeah, maybe I can find this and find that, but if anything was credible, it would have been on everybody's lips. People would be talking about it. Let me give you an example. Nostradamus. 2012.
Loads of failed prophecies.
2012. But with Nostradamus, his prophecies were very vague. They came in anagram form, puns, and they were very difficult to decipher. So look, the Prophet was asked, who are you referring to? Because he said the unclothed, barefooted, herdsman. And then somebody said, who are you referring to? The Prophet said the Bedouins. Bedouins. Very specific. Who? Bedouins. Nostradamus, none of that, mate. Now you ask for something that is specific, time specific. Let me give you something that's time specific. At the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and this is again historically can be verified, because anything that I'm saying, Rick, it can be historically verified, even by non-Muslim sources as well, even by non-Muslim sources as well. So there's a book called, it's called the Chronicles of Theophanes. It was a non-Muslim who verified what I'm about to say. So at the time of the Prophet, the Byzantines and the Persians were warring, and the Byzantines were losing like crazy. They'd lost Jerusalem, and the Persians were at the door of the capital Constantinople. A plague had spread. They'd lost. Like, it was so embarrassing, Rick. And it was at that time the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, within 9 years the Byzantines will defeat the Persians. Lo and behold, it happened. It happened. So that was a time-specific prophecy. Let me give you another one, and then you're more than welcome to give your additional criteria. I'll be more than glad to hear that. Because you've given really good points. That's why I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.
I've enjoyed it as well.
So the third one was one of the relatives of the Prophet. He was against the Prophet, like, significantly. Yeah, in Urdu they say hard doke, like he was like with a vengeance.
Yeah.
His name was Abu Lahab. The verse of the Quran was revealed that prophesied that Abu Lahab, this individual that hated Islam and the Muslims,
Yeah.
would die on disbelief. Now, let me put this in perspective for you.
Die of disbelief.
Die on disbelief, like he would never accept Islam.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Now think about it.
Yeah, yeah.
If I say to you, Rick, that Rick, now if I'm producing a book and that book is prophesizing that you would not accept Islam,
Yeah.
there's two things now. Because at the time of the Prophet, there were hypocrites.
Right.
People that would say, yeah, I'm Muslim, mate. But they'll say, yeah, I'm just saying that just for him, mate. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, don't.
Abdullah ibn Ubay.
Yeah, Abdullah bin Ubay and loads of these dons, yeah? They would say that. However, Rick, it never occurred to Abu Lahab to even pretend to be a Muslim just to falsify this verse of the Quran. In fact, even when the Prophet took over Makkah, pretty much everybody in Makkah accepted Islam. So if Abu Lahab was alive at that time, he probably would have accepted Islam. So the writer of the Quran, whoever it came from, at the moment we're keeping it vague.
Yeah.
The author knew that Abu Lahab, number one, would not be alive till the conquest of Makkah.
Yeah.
And number two, it would not even occur to him, nor his friends, to tell him, look, just pretend. Look, no, but I don't want to do it. Look, just pretend, mate.
Yeah.
Just so we can prove. Because, Rick, all it took was for him to publicly say, yeah, I'm Muslim. Everybody there, Rick, would say, that proves the Quran wrong. No, but it means this. But the Quran says he will never accept Islam. No, but it means this, it means that. But it says he will not accept. He's accepted.
Yeah, okay.
Do you see how specific it is? And what I'm saying is there's a book called Forbidden Prophecies.
Yeah.
You can read that. Does Ali have a box?
Over there.
Yeah, he does, doesn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, that book is amazing.
Yeah, we'll try give you that when you go.
Okay, yeah.
And
I can look it up.
yeah, it's called Forbidden Prophecies. And the reason why that's so awesome is it talks about prophecies of the I Ching, of Nostradamus, of Jesus, of the Mayans, of the Scientologists, and then it critiques them, and then it compares it with the prophecies of the Prophet Muhammad.
Okay. Is it biased?
Sorry?
Is it biased towards the Prophet Muhammad?
It's not biased, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to prophecies, you can try to be biased, but what the prophecy says is there for you to read, isn't it?
Ask one question.
I'm just speaking to the brother.
How are you, man?
Alhamdulillah, how are you?
I'm going in a couple of minutes.
Where's brother Ali Dawah?
Ali Dawah's over there, brother.
Is he?
Yeah, you can speak to him.
Where's Muhammad Hijab?
Wallahu alam, brother. You can look around.
Ali Dawah's down there?
Yes, my brother. Yeah. So, a prophecy, it can't be biased because prophecy, by definition, are words uttered by that person, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you can see, that person says that. Interpretation of the prophecy, that's up to you. You can agree or you can disagree, but they're there for you.
Yeah.
And you can check the primary source material yourself.
Okay,
he said this, he said that. Let me see myself.
Sure.
But what I'm trying to say, Rick, is, and if, as Muslims, we're saying, look, the Prophet has prophecies. We have the Quran, which is available in English, and I will happily give you a Quran translation. You can go home, highlight it, read it, do whatever you need. And I'm not going to say, yeah, read it when you're with me. I'm not insecure like that. The reason we're like that, and the reason why, and you check this statistic, Islam is the fastest growing religion. Out of all the religions, you said, that entity that you said it has to be able to speak to everybody in a way that people can understand. Out of the top 5 languages on this planet, Arabic is the only one that's a live language, and that is attributed to one of the old religions. The New Testament is in Greek. Greek is not in the top 5. The Old Testament, Hebrew, is not in the top 5. The Vedas is in Sanskrit. It's not in the top 5. So when it comes to all this criteria, Rick, if you're honest with yourself, you say in terms of live language, in terms of there's 3 ways the Quran is preserved. And you can speak to Christians, Jews, Hindus, you're more than welcome to do that. But the words that I'm saying to you, Rick, will echo. because Islam is the only one that makes this prophecy, and it's three-pronged. The Quran is preserved in terms of the living language, in terms of manuscripts, and number three, verbally as well. So we talked about manuscripts and talked about the Birmingham manuscript. Yeah. I talked about the living language. And the third thing, verbally, did you know, Rick, Quran is the only mass memorized book on this planet?
I know it's memorized by loads of people. Yeah.
In Christianity, the Bible is not mass memorized. Yeah. The Vedas are not mass memorized. Yeah. In fact, I would challenge you to find me one Hindu that has memorized the entire Vedas.
Yeah, okay. I don't necessarily see that as a good thing though. When kids are taught to memorize it from when they're very young, I don't really see that as a good thing. There's a good point.
Yeah. Let me come back to this point. Okay, but I promise you I will answer this. Yeah. I have an answer, but I don't want to lose the train of thought.
Okay, sure.
So the reason why I said memorization is brilliant is because anything can happen with paper and pens.
Yeah.
Oh, we can get rid of the books.
Yeah.
We can delete stuff off the internet. But the preservation of the Quran, upon reflection, Rick, is a phenomenal way. Memorization is a phenomenal way that objectively any layman can understand, this is actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
Because books can be miscopied, things can be put in, things can be taken out, as we know with the Vatican Codex, as we know with many kind of things. But yeah. I gave you a codex. I gave you 4 folios in Birmingham University with 100% word accuracy.
Yeah.
And that's number one, that's phenomenal. Yeah. But coming back to your point, I didn't want to move from it.
Yeah, that's right.
When children are young, their mind, their brain waves are in theta. That means that children absorb things very quickly.
Yeah, sure.
And then, so that's the first 5 years. That's why if you look at the old scholars, Ibn Taymiyyah, Imam Nawawi, these guys memorized the Quran at a very young age. Yeah. Some say even as young as 6.
Yeah.
And there was a bit of news that I heard about a month ago. A Palestinian 6-year-old memorized it.
Yeah.
And the reason for this, Rick, is because your brain is in theta, or when you're 8, 9, at the very least, it's in beta. You're absorbing everything.
Yeah.
That's why there is such concerted effort to help with the learning process at a very young age.
Yeah.
Once you pass that, your brain waves are alpha, and it's very difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I said beta. I meant alpha. Then beta is us. Yeah, when we're speaking.
Yeah, okay.
Alpha is when we're watching TV and stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So stuff like this, Rick, is why even atheists in China, they make the children memorize the sayings of Confucius.
Yeah.
There's a book, and these people are atheists.
Yeah.
There's a documentary on Amazon Prime. You can check it out on Confucianism.
Yeah.
How Chinese, they don't believe in God and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yet they make their children memorize the sayings of Confucius from a small age.
Yeah.
And on the documentary, you know what he says when he's asked, why are they memorizing it when they're young? He goes, they're not going to understand it now, but it is something that's going to benefit them when they grow up, when they're older.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay.
So what do you think so far about the prophecies? Something that's interesting? Something that, you're onto something here.
Yeah.
Tell me more. Or is it like, what about this, what about that?
I'd need to... I've never felt the desire to actually look more into the Quran, but...
have you got a bit of that desire now?
I do, especially regarding the prophecies. I would like to...
Cool.
I'm particularly interested in knowing how many prophecies there were and how accurate they were.
Excellent.
There needs to be a high percentage of accuracy. If say that something hasn't happened yet, it's not really a prophecy. Because who knows if it's ever going to happen.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I actually agree with you.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Rick, think about it.
Yeah.
I'm a born Muslim. I was born in this country, but I was born Muslim.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're more than welcome to.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if I felt that prophecies were not a good standard, I just wouldn't have mentioned it.
Yeah, okay.
You see?
Yeah, okay.
The fact that that's criteria that I suggested must mean that, there must be something in this.
Yeah.
That's why I would suggest don't go to the non-Islamic sources. Look at the Islamic sources, obviously.
Yeah, okay,
because if you want to learn about science, you don't go to people that believe that the Earth is flat.
Yeah, I understand.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course,
Like someone who believes that the Earth is flat is.
Okay,
It's gonna be
I'm
issues.
gonna have a read. I'm gonna read some of the Quran.
Yeah. You were going to say something?
Just one thing. Unfortunately, I need to go. I need to stretch my legs. But just one question is, because you said you were born Muslim.
Yes.
To a Muslim family.
Yes.
So my question is, if you were born, say, in India, to a Hindu family, in a Hindu community, and brought up with the teachings of Hinduism,
Yes.
do you think you would be a Hindu right now?
No.
No.
No. I'll tell you why.
Is that an honest answer?
It is an honest answer because I think everybody living here in the UK, Rick, with the amount of materialism and desire and stuff like that, think about it. You see such beautiful women here. You got alcohol chilled, you know, with the droplets of water and stuff like that, and it being glorified. You see gambling glorified, YouTubers promoting it, and lying and cheating glorified. It would make more sense for me to be attracted to that stuff rather than a religion that's saying, that's forbidden, mate, don't do that. There has to be, I would say, a period in most Muslims' lives that the Muslim starts going, why does the Quran tell us not to do this? Why does the Quran? What does Hinduism say about this? What does Judaism say about this? And I would say that crystallizing moment happened for myself. I have looked into Hinduism, Christianity, Judaism, and that's why every evidence I've given today, you probably saw that there was an implicit comparison with another religion. And maybe that comes, maybe I'm saying that unconsciously because I've made that comparison before, that when it came to Christianity, Rick, they actually cannot tell me, and no Christian will make that claim, that the Bible they have today is the same Bible, word for word, that was there from the time of Jesus.
I understand.
And my main thing, Rick, is that if you're telling me to read a book, you can't even confirm that it's the same book. Why on earth would I read it?
I know, I understand,
So that's...
I must be, even though I'm an atheist, I've seen... Actually, I'm sure I've seen you debating Christians, and the Muslim always wins the argument.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. So that's the thing, Rick. Like, and that's what I do. Like, even logically, I'm like, okay, if there were loads of gods, like even with close friends, like, no matter how close we are, Rick, eventually we'll fall out. We get into arguments and stuff. Even with my own mum, my dad. We always fall apart. So if there were loads of gods, I would have thought they'd be falling apart. And if gods start warring, I don't know if you see this old depiction. I think they redone it. It's called Clash of the Titans. It was Liam Neeson was in there as well. So Clash of the Titans is like godlike figures fighting each other. Even the latest Thor is talking about gods. Multiple gods, and it's gods fighting each other. You got Thor, Loki, then their father, and you know, it's a joke.
Mythical.
Mythical, but people actually believe that. Like Hindus believe that there are multiple gods, however they wrap it. So in that regard, when, Rick, I wake up and I'm in a Hindu household, I don't want to simplify the faith, but, you know, and this is not what everybody believes. However, if a fly comes and sits on an idol, and I'm worshipping the idol, and that idol requires me to move that fly, and I'm asking the idol for help, that immediately sends alarm bells to me. Like if the idol can't help itself, it requires me to get rid of a fly, it requires me to dust it daily, it can't clean itself. How can I be expected to worship it, and how can I expect it to help me? So that's why the criteria I said initially was empirical, rational, logical, philosophical. Because I would say, Rick, the only way that I can stand in the sun on a Sunday, you know, in the UK, rather than doing some madness outside, is because I genuinely believe this, and I genuinely feel that if I present this to somebody sincere like yourself, it will definitely cause nuts and bolts to be turning in a person's head and going, you know what, it's actually true. It's actually true that Islam is unique compared to other religions, and I do need to look into this. The only thing that I would say is that, of course, there are other forces at play. Like, if you were in the UK, you know, I don't know, was it like 50 years ago with this Protestant Catholic thing was happening in this country, you'd be very averse to Catholics. If before that, you'd be very averse to Jews. Before that, you'd be very averse to the Bavarian Illuminati. So all of these were groups that were scapegoated by governments. Just like now, you know, some governments are scapegoating different countries and stuff like that. So keeping the politics aside and objectively just looking into this stuff. So in response to yourself, I would say, born in any country, I think in this global village that we're in and with social media and all these lectures available to us, I think everybody has to question their faith at one point or another.
No, that's fair. Yeah, it's fair enough, I've actually got a list of questions I'd like to ask another time. It's going on a bit, but
I honestly don't mind. I'm respectful of you and your time.
There's just one thing that suddenly came to my mind. I've got what triggered it, but I just remembered seeing a couple of lines in the Quran, and one of them is, I mean, I feel you're like a really genuine guy. Friendly.
I appreciate it.
Now,
be honest. Don't worry about offending
me.
me.
My honest question is, could I be your friend?
100.
As an atheist, as a non-believer of Islam.
I would say no.
No, that's right. Yeah. Why? So why?
Shall I tell you why?
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
Because I think we're already friends.
No, but doesn't the Quran say you can't befriend non-believers?
If the Quran had said that, then that technically means what I've said to you, I'm going against the Quran.
Yeah, but that means you're going against the Quran.
Yeah, huh? But what I'm trying to say to you is the Quran doesn't say that. And
is that true?
Of course it is.
What?
Of course it is. This is, you know what it is? This was actually,
I've read this.
You have. You've read it, but let me explain to you the context. Sure. Okay. It's actually ironic because just today I was watching a documentary released by Lauren Southern.
Yeah.
She was within that fraternity of Tommy Robinson and these far-right guys. And she was revealing a lot of stuff. It's actually a good watch.
Yeah.
And this was actually something that was perpetuated by the far right and Tommy Robinson.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't befriend non-Muslims, and your Quran doesn't say this.
Yeah.
This is absolutely false.
Yeah.
If the Quran had said this, there would be an absolute epidemic of this in this country.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't, because look how many cameras there are.
Yeah.
And everybody in the comment section would be telling me and quoting that verse, saying, how dare you go against the Quran?
Really?
How dare, in fact, him,
him,
all these dons are quiet. He's smiling.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
I think that's quite a common concept that people got this idea.
The thing is that it's unfortunate and it's sad that when it comes to this sort of stuff, it sells newspapers, it sells videos, and that's why Lauren Southern was saying, and even what's his name? One of Tommy Robinson's cameramen, he was saying as well that when an incident would happen, they would rush with their cameras to bash the Muslims because they knew it would get views. It would get views. And the thing is, it gets views because think about it, if you've got a group that you can scapegoat, then what happens is it's easy for you to manipulate the people by saying, they're the other, they're the enemy, and then you can put laws in place. The thing is, I can tell you in front of these cameras, I have had and have non-Muslim friends. This does not go against the Quran. The thing is, anything that you say, you may have said something. Anything can be taken out of context and repeated and perpetually put out there. Especially if, for example, I'm on YouTube, you've seen my content. If I was to say something silly, it would get